Welcome. My name is Opubo Benebo. The farm produce of a subsistence farm, while expected to stave off hunger, is also preferred to provide the consumers of the produce with maximum energy derivable from its biochemistry. In this regard, then, the choice selection of crops for farming under the Farming for Food programs are anticipated to provide comprehensive and nutritionally well-balanced feeding. And the choice for simply energy provisioning is the cassava, although there are yet other reasons for the choice of cassava. The farming activity is necessarily constrained by the selection from among the crops that had been chosen as the essential crops, and the choice of the next crop as being cassava as having the capacity to provide maximum energy is well documented as derivative of its high carbohydrate content in contrast with other tubers. Energy provisioning based on the essential crops selection criteria on a priority basis is preferred as to keep the body muscles well supplied with carbohydrate for the catabolic reactions and consequently ensure the healthfulness derivative of the planting, harvesting, and consumption of the other essential crops as may be guided by rational sequencing of the foods of harvest. In synopsis, then, this episode entitled Planting Essential Crops Cassava offers guidance to the planting of cassava, the approach to planting that gives relatively bountiful harvest, relief of the need for preservation of the tubers and stem for next planting operations, and general implementation of the cassava farming specific process automation control. The driver rationale guiding farming the essential crops cassava is to ensure localized unitary harvesting, in which the harvesting of farm produce of single plant does not impact the other plant tubers, and as such ensures managed harvesting in accordance with prevailing need for feeding. In effect, tubers can be let to grow for as big as possible until harvested, being not impacted by prior harvesting. Accordingly, the approach will start with the planting of actual cassava seeds in sowing context that effectively ensures separation of the growing tubers of the different plants to be perceptually distant. Of course, this is enabled when the planting is done with the seeds of the cassava, because experiential documentation asserts that seeding planting lets grow one plant per seed, while stem planting, though easier to perform, results in stem connected node growth of the tubers, and as such interactive harvesting of tubers of one node on tubers of the other. The singularness of the growth dynamics of plants grown with seeds also enables unifocal distribution of nutrients to each plant, such that each plant directs the nutrients utilization towards the exclusive growth of the tubers. So that though planting cassava is most frequently undertaken with the stem, and that is fine, being relatively easier, the approach presented here opts to undertake the planting with seeds. Generally, the seeds are collected in the bud from the stem. When collected, the buds are put into a porous container, say a small cloth sack of the size of a hand glove. In fact, even a cloth hand glove is fine for the purposes. After the bud dries up, the case usually cracks up with an explosive burst and lets out the seeds flying off in every direction, but are trapped by the sackcloth when put in such containment. After the explosive burst of the bud, there are then seeds available to plant to grow cassava. The rationale for planting cassava by seed becomes obvious during the harvesting, which is much easier than when planted with the stem. For one thing, the growth orientation of the cassava tubers are, by the farming approach adopted here, developed into a disc-like circular setting, such as support singular or non-singular harvesting. In this growth context, the disc could have the thickness of about 3 tubers, mid diameters, and a radius span of the length of the longest tuber. Of course, depending on the planting scheme, the tubers may also grow into a truncated conical structure, with the truncated apex being at the start of the stem in the soil. The need to start with actual seeds, however, is forced by the regionalism of cassava coupled with immigration restrictions of crossing national boundaries with live or still wet cells or organisms. So the form of the cassava that can be allowed to cross national boundaries is the dried seed, hence the choice for initiation of the planting process with the seed, such that all conditions are met. Certain common practices, however, apply to the planting of cassava that need recognizing. The cassava plant, being endemic of tropics, grows well in temperatures between 20 degrees and 29 or 68 degrees Fahrenheit and 86 for optimal growth. So irrespective of the region of the world, it is best to consider planting cassava when the temperature is moderately high, say 77 degrees, but stay clear of extreme heat and cold. As always, the first task is the preparation of the soil of the target ridge on which to plant the cassava, which starts off with the biofertilizing of the ridge soil. Now, prep the soil to foster that disc-like growth format to obtain. To boot, towards one end of the target ridge, 12 inches radius by 6 inches deep hole is scooped out and then filled with biofertilizers. Also, because the tubers grow radially outwards from the plant root point, it's better to space the planting points at about 3 feet apart. The spacing allows for 12 inches spacing between each growth domain of the 2 feet diameter hole preserved for each plant, but also allows adequate ventilation. The biofertilizers filled hole and the surroundings are watered very wet. A single seed is inserted at about the center of the superficial circle of the cylindrical axial location of the hole, such that the seed is located at about 5 inches into the hole, so there is enough of the stem upon growth to be still below the surface for stability. The seeds are then left for 3 days. The water will drain off slowly into the ground. However, by the time that happens, the seed will have also germinated, and then the prevailing low moisture content just serves right the needs for the rapid growth. The plant and soil are therefore very likely watered, perhaps weekly. Although most of the water drains off into the ground and the soil becomes somewhat dry, yet it also remains sort of humid, such that the biologics of the biofertilizers are encapsulated with water matter, but with the interspecies or pores actually dry. This outcome actually obtains, even though counterintuitive, and has been extensively well documented and analyzed in the book Bioreactions Analysis by bountiful. In any case, this state of wetness is the object in this circumstance to be established, as even the soil seems dry as to be suited to growth of the cassava, yet still provisions a wet context for the tubers. After the seeds have germinated and shot through the surface above ground, slight behavior of phototropism and bend towards the direction of morning sunlight will be perceptible, making palpable the strong need for sunlight, even intense sunlight spanning between 8 to 10 hours. So a design as built to inhibit the heliotropism is also implemented, though not explicitly for heliotropism, but more for ensuring incidence of sunlight directly on the plant from vertically above. The cassava farming specific dynamic consists of the light irradiation routine and the watering routine, and the dynamics of these two routines both define the specifications and guide for the implementation of the crop-specific farming process automation control. Again, PLC programs are implemented to auto-manage the plant's watering and sunlight irradiation routines as established. The routine as auto-performed is simply checked often to ensure non-interruption, and the whole cassava farming operations left alone for a minimum of 8 months to 18 months, as that is the time duration the growth process spans. Sometime after 8 months, the leaves begin to turn yellow, signaling readiness for harvest. At harvesting, a mere hand scraping of the biofertilizer surface readily exposes the cassava as spread around the stem. The biofertilizers are scraped off the root, the stem shaken a little, and simply pulled upwards and readily leaves out from the soil. Because the harvesting of each is so bountiful, a farmer may choose to harvest each plant on a feed need basis and therefore allowing unharvested plants to continue growing until need for harvest. The conclusion that could be drawn here is that although the cassava plant is natively tropics, structured farming of the cassava of the essential crops chosen for subsistence can be performed anywhere in the world with the provision of planting with the seed and hence be effectively available to all citizens of the world such that hunger can be stemmed and at first tier the consumer perceptibly energized by the high carbohydrate contents of the crop. And it is a wrap. And on that note, I say to you, thank you so much for having come to listen to this observation about efforts aimed at alleviating world hunger through subsistence farming by both urban dweller farmers and emerging countries' small farm farmers. You are truly appreciated, and if you'd like to get privileged viewer reader information, access podcasts of specialized contents, or even access vertical integrated concepts, then I implore you to join my supporter club and join that privileged status. Moreover, while still here, do please take a moment and subscribe to the channel as to be informed of the publications of every new episode as soon as it is released. Thank you, and bye till next episode.